We're living in this age of just unprecedented data. We have technology that promises more transparency than ever. But what if that very same tech is actually creating brand new, super sophisticated ways to hide the truth? Today, we're going to dive into some really fascinating research that connects the cutting-edge world of big data with a very old trick, cooking the books.
Okay, so let's just jump right in with a question that it sounds totally backward, right? Can having more data actually make it harder to find the truth? It feels like a paradox, but it's the central puzzle that researchers are trying to solve when it comes to modern finance. So let's unpack this. All right, first things first. To really get this, we've got to start with the problem at the very heart of our story. And it's a problem with a surprisingly gentle name, creative accounting. Sounds almost artistic, doesn't it? But its purpose, well, it's anything but. So what is it exactly? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a very, very flattering photo filter, but for a company's financial reports. Creative accounting uses all the gray areas, all the little loopholes, and the choices within the accounting rules to present a picture that's, well, it's technically legal, but it is 100% intentionally misleading. And I love this quote from the research because it just cuts right to the chase. There's no messing around here. The goal, plain and simple, is to deceive, to make a company's financial health or its profits look way, way rosier than they actually are. And you might be asking, why would they do this? Well, the motivations are pretty straightforward and very human. It could be about dodging taxes, or maybe artificially pumping up the stock price, or hey, making sure the execs at the top get bigger bonuses. Sometimes it's just about meeting the really strict terms of a loan, or maybe just hiding a really bad quarter from investors. Okay, so let's switch gears and look at the other side of our story, this massive technological revolution we're in. On the surface, things like the Internet of Things and big data, they seem like the ultimate tools for transparency, don't they? A world where we have this constant, verifiable stream of information. And the engine driving all of this is the Internet of Things, or IoT. Now, this is not just your smart speaker at home. We're talking about a massive global network of connected devices, sensors in factories, trackers in supply chains all over our cities, and they're all collecting and sending data every single second. And this constant fire hose of information creates what we call big data. It's usually defined by three key things. They call them the 3 Vs. First, there's just the sheer volume of it all. We're talking truly enormous, almost unimaginable amounts of data. Then there's velocity. It's being created and it's moving at lightning speed. And finally, variety. It's not just numbers in a spreadsheet. It comes in every format you can think of, from text and images to sensor data and audio files. So, okay, we've got the creative accountants on one side and this absolute explosion of data on the other. You'd think one would just cancel out the other, right? That all this data would make it impossible to hide. But this is where the story takes a really fascinating and completely counterintuitive turn. Just think about this. What if all that data, with all its mind-boggling complexity, wasn't a spotlight shining down on what companies are doing? What if, instead, it was creating a kind of fog? A digital smokescreen so thick and so complex that it becomes the absolute perfect place to hide financial tricks. And this diagram from the paper, wow, it just lays out the researcher's core idea perfectly. You can literally trace the flow. See it on the left? The Internet of Things generates this tidal wave of big data. And the researchers argue that the sheer complexity of that data, in turn, creates brand new opportunities, new hiding places for creative accounting to thrive totally undetected. It's like a chain reaction. So here's the bottom line. Instead of making an auditor's job easier, the insane volume, velocity, and variety of data can just completely overwhelm them. How can a person or even a smart algorithm realistically spot a cleverly hidden lie when it's buried in trillions of data points from thousands of different sources? It's not just finding a needle in a haystack anymore. It's like trying to find a specific needle in an entire continent of haystacks. So it's a great theory, right? But a theory is just a theory until you can prove it. So how in the world did the researchers actually test this surprising connection? Let's get into the evidence they dug up. They didn't just guess. The researchers used this really powerful statistical method called structural equation modeling. Now, I know that sounds super complex, but just think of it like building a rigorous mathematical stress test for a complex chain of cause and effect.
It let them take a massive data set and actually measure the strength of the links between IoT, big data, and cooking the books. And the results were, well, they were striking. As you can see right here in this table, they found a very strong, statistically significant link between the Internet of Things and the growth of big data. That's that first row. No huge surprise there. But then, and this is the key, look at the second row. They also found a strong, highly significant link between big data and the rise of creative accounting. The data proved it. The connection was real. They even managed to put a specific number on it. This value here, 0.328, it represents how much the Internet of Things indirectly influences creative accounting. In other words, its impact isn't direct, it flows through the complexity of big data. The data itself is the bridge connecting the technology to the deception. And this is the final model from the study. Now, I know it looks incredibly complicated, but the takeaway is actually really simple and powerful. Every single one of these lines represents a relationship that the data tested and proved. The numbers show that the connections we've been talking about, from our smart devices through big data all the way to potential financial fraud, it's not just a theory. It's statistically proven. The data confirmed the entire chain. So after all that, what does this actually mean for us, for the real world? It means that big data isn't simply good or bad. It's an incredibly powerful tool. And just like any tool, it can be used for very different things. It's a classic double-edged sword. On one hand, the promise is just immense, right? Better products, smarter decisions for businesses, a real competitive edge. But on the other side of that coin, the peril is just as real. It creates huge new risks for data security. And as this research proves, it can make it much harder to audit companies effectively, which increases the risk of fraud going completely unseen. And let's be clear, this is not just some abstract academic exercise. This stuff has profound real-world consequences. It gets to the very foundation of our entire financial system, trust. It impacts the stability of our investments, the transparency of the markets, and really, our confidence in the global economy as a whole. Which really just leaves us with one final and really critical question to think about. We know technology is going to keep getting smarter and more complex at an incredible speed. The real challenge, then, is making sure that our ability to regulate it, to audit it, and to apply our ethics to it doesn't get left behind in the dust.